Objects and Learning Platforms, a Comparative Analysis by Jorge Rodriguez Marrero. Work submitted as partial requisite for LIDE 7040, Platforms and Learning Objects for Virtual Teaching. Our learning objectives for this presentation are a definition of learning objects, definition of educational platforms, salient characteristics of learning objects and educational platforms, comparative analysis of learning objects and educational platforms, the learning platform as meeting place, and references. Distance education thrives on student interaction with the instructor, other students, and the content. This dynamic is carried out by two very important elements, learning objects and educational platforms. Both elements have a close interrelated relationship. Both elements have to work in harmony in order to function and to meet educational goals. But what are learning objects and educational platforms? According to Maddaloni, a learning object is a modular resource, usually digital and web-based, that can be used and reused to support learning activities. Learning objects are customizable, discrete elements. They are the content that students interact with. With learning objects, the task can be tailored, individualized or collaborative learning depending on the learning outcomes. Harakishian, 2010, also notes that learning objects can become standardized through the reuse of learning content. Learning objects can also be modified according to the educational needs and requirements of the learning situation. The same learning object can be adapted to different kinds of courses, so you can fine-tune your training materials for each specific project, Maddaloni states. According to the website instructionaldesign.org, learning objects are interoperable and can plug and play with any system or delivery tool. They are reusable. They can be used or adapted for use in multiple learning events. They are accessible. They can be stored in any way that allows for easy searchability. They are manageable. They can be tracked and updated over time. It is through learning objects that allow the activity to remain student-centered and engaged in an active learning environment, which leads to learning platforms. This graph, we see learning objects and learning platforms. And in the bottom, we see the participants, which can be the instructors and the students. These participants interact with each other and also with the learning platforms and the learning objects in the learning platforms. Now, the learning platform contains all the elements necessary, all the learning objects, in order for the students to interact with the content and with each other. Now, learning platforms allow participants to engage the content and with each other. It is the vehicle of content delivery and interaction. The learning platform provides an interconnected space and learning environment where the activities and interactions take place. Hill 2012 notes that, quote, learning platforms are designed around the learner, giving a sense of identity that is maintained throughout the learning life cycle. Learners are not just predefined roles with access levels within each course, but central actors in the system design, end of quote. This allows participants to engage the content and with each other. One further benefit or feature of the learning platform is its availability. According to Back, Beringer, Haberstroh, Eller, Stossman, and Peters 2016, any user may access the platform from anywhere using any device, but it is dependent on the internet connection and the type of device used. Back et al. Also state that its convenience of access is an attractive quality that many users take advantage of, end of quote. In its simplest form, The learning platform is the vehicle of content delivery and interaction. At its most complex, it is a meeting place where education and interaction mesh together. In ancient Greece, the agora, a term that means meeting place or assembly, was the dynamic heart of the polis or city, according to the Agora of Athens. This place gave the city a sense of community and built relationships between people. It can be argued that we can use the agora to serve as a metaphor for the learning platform, which becomes a meeting place for the interchange of knowledge and ideas. Hill 2012 posits that, quote, learning platforms therefore are social in nature, supporting connections between learners and customization of content based on learners' needs, end of quote. Therefore, the modern learning platform can serve as the agora of the learning environment. Learning objects and learning platforms are interconnected in many ways. For example, learning objects can form part of the learning platform, but can be used independently from the learning platform and be used elsewhere. However, the learning platform needs the learning objects to function. The learning objects provide the context and the interactive environment in which learning occurs. Through the use of learning objects and learning platforms, education is transformed and reorganized, able to meet the needs of different learning styles due to its malleable and adaptive nature. The learner engages the content and the platform in order to interact with the content and other participants, either individually or collaboratively. It is participatory in nature. Both the learning objects and the learning platforms can be adjusted to the requirements of the educational environment and specific needs of the participants. Munsami and Govinder 2018 note that when supported by invested instructors, administrators, and students, learning platforms can have a positive and successful impact in education and learning. This graph shows the relationship between the learning platform, the learning objects, and the participants. This table summarizes all the previously discussed content of learning objects and learning platforms. This is the first part of the table, where we see that learning objects are modular resources, usually digital and web-based, and can be reused to support learning activities. And this quote is by Maddaloni. Learning platforms allow participants to engage the content and with each other. It is the vehicle of content delivery and interaction. And their interconnection is that learning objects can form part of the learning platform, but can be used independently from the learning platform. The same learning object can be adapted to different kinds of courses, so you can fine-tune your training materials for each specific project. This quote is also by Maddaloni. And the learning platform is interconnected because it provides the learning environment where learning activities take place. And the interconnection between learning objects and learning platforms is that learning platforms need the learning objects to function. The learning object provide the context and the interactive environment in which learning occurs. This second part of the table includes learning objects are customizable and discrete elements. They are the content that students interact with, and the learning objects, the task can be tailored, individualized or collaborative learning depending on the learning outcomes. This quote by Hill on learning platforms is that learning platforms are designed around the learner, giving a sense of identity that is maintained throughout the learning life cycle. Learners are not just predefined roles with access levels within each course, but central actors in the system design. Learning platforms, therefore, are social in nature, supporting connections between learners and customization of content based on learners' needs. And I posit that the agora is an ancient Greek term that means meeting place or assembly. And I posit as well that this term can serve as a metaphor for the learning platform that becomes a meeting place for the acquisition and interchange of knowledge and ideas. Also, learning objects are interoperable. They can be plugged and played with any system or delivery tool. They are reusable and can be used to or adapted for use in multiple learning events. They are accessible and can be stored in a way that allows for easy searchability. Manageable. They can be tracked and updated over time. And these are from instructionaldesign.org. Now, the learning platform allows for the discovery of instructional content, user-generated content, and of other learners. And their interconnection through the use of learning objects and learning platforms, education is transformed and reorganized, and it is able to meet the needs of different learning styles due to its malleable and adaptive nature. And finally, learning objects allow the activity to remain student-centered and engaged in an active learning environment. Meanwhile, learning platforms can provide customizable integrations with learning objects, and their interconnection is that learner engages the content and the platform in order to interact with the content and other participants either individually or collaboratively. It is participatory in nature. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation.